Hello, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be in the world. So, basically, in the last vlog, I have provided you with idea as to how divorce applications are made in Canada and what are the situations wherein you can file for divorce. Okay. Now, of course, when I arrived here as an immigrant, I have noticed that a lot of Filipinos have been applying and filing for applications for divorce because in Canada, again, Canada allows divorce, and the Philippines is the only country in the world that doesn't approve or that doesn't have any divorce. Now, you may be asking, a lot of Filipinos have been filing for divorce. So basically, let me just reiterate that anyone who's actually working on a work permit or who's actually permanent resident, of course, citizens of Canada can actually apply, with the exception of all temporary resident visas, which are particularly the visit visas. Now, of course, say for example, you're working here on a work permit and you have left your family there and there's a fallout. Okay. It is very common, unfortunately, with Filipinos that I see when I first migrated here in Canada who are actually separated from their spouses, which is unfortunate, but it is a reality. Now, Irvin, you might be asking, Irvin, how do we go about the service of documents? Of course, when a person in Canada, a Filipino who is in Canada, actually files for divorce, okay, I'm going to use my jurisdiction, which is Alberta, okay? For example, a Filipino files for divorce in Alberta. And basically, the spouse is left in the Philippines. Of course, they've been separated for so many years now, or less than a month now, or basically they just had a fallout, okay? And then this Filipino in Canada wants to file for divorce. Now, once you file for divorce, the court will have to be Court of King's Bench, which has the jurisdiction over divorce applications. So, Irvin, how can we actually serve the documents? Because of course, if the other person, of course, once you have a fallout, you don't really care anymore, right? You just have to file for divorce. Then I care, right? So what's going to happen is that previously, a lot of Filipinos have been serving, once they have filed a statement of claim for divorce, they actually serve the document or the statement of claim, the filed statement of claim, directly to the person, okay, in the Philippines. So Mr. A has filed for a statement of claim for divorce, and then basically once it is filed, the next thing to do is actually to serve it. And Miss B is actually in the Philippines. Say, for example, in Makati, or in Manila, or in Quezon City, or in the Metro Manila area, or let's say Davao, okay, wherever you may be. So what's going to happen is that you will only have to serve, okay, by courier or registered mail to the person in the Philippines directly. Say, for example, in Makati BGC or in Taguig, once you have served that, you just have, you're giving the other party the opportunity to respond. More often than not, the Miss B or any other Filipinos in the Philippines do not actually respond to the statement of claim. So what's going to happen is once the other person or Miss B from the Philippines doesn't respond to the statement of claim, then Mr. A can actually file a notice in default, noting the other party in default. That way, the other party or Miss B loses her right to actually respond to the application filed, and then the court will now proceed to determine the application filed without considering the Miss B, who lost her opportunity to respond because again she did not respond during a given time. That used to be the process, but now it has changed. Okay, it has changed in 2020. Service of all documents are governed by the Hague Service Convention. Okay, this is a treaty from different contracting states allowing for a more reliable and efficient means of serving documents in other countries. Because again, there are different means of service. In Alberta, might be different in Manila or in the Philippines or in the US or in France or in Japan. Okay, so that way when there's a treaty So basically, it's going to be like uniformity in all of the contracting states. So you just have to choose one over the other. Okay. Now, the main provision in the Hague Convention that relates to service would be Article 10. Okay, as I've said before, Philippines actually allows personal service, direct personal service, or direct service to the other person located in the Philippines, but that has changed. Okay, by virtue of the Administrative Order number 251-2020, that has changed. So the stand now in the Philippines is that it is now objecting to Article 10 sub A and sub C. Let me just read it to you. Article 10 provides, provided the state of destination does not object, the present convention shall not interfere with the freedom to send judicial documents by postal channels directly to persons abroad, the freedom of judicial officers, officials, or other competent persons of the state of origin to effect service of judicial documents directly through the judicial officers, officials, or other competent persons of the state of destination. The freedom of any person interested in a judicial proceeding, which is C, to effect service of judicial documents directly through the judicial officers, officials, or other competent persons of the state of destination. So it can be through direct service, A, B, there's a competent authority, or C, directly through the judicial officers where the person is located. The Philippines has objected to A and C. So unfortunately, there's no more direct service, and there's no direct service to judicial officers or directly to the person. What remains now is B, the freedom of judicial officers, officials, or other competent persons of the state of origin to effect service of judicial documents directly through the judicial officers, officials, or other competent persons of the state of destination. Now, what are the required documents of Canada? Of course, once you have filed the statement of claim, are we still required to provide another document to properly serve this through service abroad? Is it like, Irvin, okay, where do we go from here? So what's going to happen is that, of course, once you have made the statement of claim, and when you're planning to actually serve the document abroad, you have to actually file an application for substitutional service, which is service abroad. With the application for substitutional service, you have to actually attach an affidavit of service of outside Canada, Hague Service Convention Central Authority, and then basically you also have to attach an order, service outside of Canada, Hague Service Convention Central Authority, and affidavit of service. Okay, which means that you have to submit an affidavit stating out why you are seeking this kind of service, because this is not person. If for example, because the Philippines has actually objected to 10A and 10C, so you cannot now serve to directly to the person. So what you need to do now is actually provide an affidavit of substitutional service, because personal service is not affected anymore. So it's a substitutional service because you have to go through a central authority in the Philippines before a service can happen. Okay. So once you have filed that, order has been issued for substitutional service or service abroad, how do we go about serving it in the Philippines? Okay. So again, the basis for this is Administrative Order 251-2020 of the Supreme Court of the Philippines, which was NBank. Okay, so the central authority in the Philippines is the Office of the Court Administrator attached to the Supreme Court of the Philippines. Their office is in Padre Faro, Manila, Philippines. The forwarding authority would be the Court of King's Bench, which approved the order for substitution service or service abroad. The forwarding authority would be us lawyers in Alberta, okay? I'm just using Alberta as jurisdiction again, okay? And then the competent authority speaks about the judges or the executive judges or the presiding judges in the area where the intended recipient resides, okay? So for example, Ms. B resides in Makati, then the Office of the Court Administrator will actually forward the request for service to the judge, executive judge, or the presiding judge in Makati, because that has the jurisdiction over Makati, and then we'll serve the pleading. Now, how do we go about in practicality? Irvin, you have spoken so much theories or theoreticals. We need to now apply it in practicality's sake. Okay, so what you have to do is once the order, okay, for service abroad has been approved by the Court of King's Bench in Alberta, then the lawyer must actually draft a model form. It's more of like a request for service abroad of judicial or extrajudicial documents. Okay? Now, of course, once you have prepared the model form and the doc, you have to actually prepare the order for service abroad. Okay? Just to provide you with an opportunity to show that, hey, I have actually complied, that I'm being allowed to actually serve this through other means or substitutional service, which is service abroad, through the competent authority. And then, of course, you have to prepare the statement of claim or any other commencement documents, such as, for example, third-party claim, counterclaim, any other claims, initiatory pleadings or commencement pleadings. Okay, it cannot be the response pleadings like statement of defense or whatever. Okay. Now, again, the pleadings must be in either English or Filipino. Good thing Canada is an English-speaking country. Of course, there's French, but English would work as well. So we don't really have to worry about that. But if, for example, it is in Korea, you have to translate everything to Korean language. In the Philippines, they allow English or Filipino. Now, of course, the documents that you have to be serving would have to be in duplicate copies, okay? Especially when you are actually requesting the Office of the Court Administrator and you are actually submitting or in physical copies, okay? Next would be that the address of the intended recipient, of course, it has to have the address of the intended recipient, okay? It is not enough that the person is named, but of course you have to actually have an address, for you to serve that. So basically, this could be in Makati, say for example, 5 Bangkal Street, or we don't know. If in the Philippines, of course, especially in the rural areas, it is not as defined as in urban areas or cities like Metro Manila. For example, in Tawi-Tawi, it could be just barangay, purok, or block 1, lot 5, or district of this, district of that. As even if you don't have the exact address, try to identify as much as possible the location of the person. Say, for example, Purok, but as long as you can identify the area with much certainty, then that is fine. Okay? And of course, lastly would be the payment of $100. That is from the OCA. I am speaking as $100. I'm definitely sure, if I'm not mistaken, that the $100 would be in US dollars and not Canadian dollars, not New Zealand dollars or Australian dollars. It will always be US dollars. Okay, now, once you have prepared all of the documents, the model form, the pleadings to be served, the intended address of the intended recipient, now you can actually now contact the Office of the Court Administrator. You can submit a request through email or physical copies. Okay, if you're going to send it through email, their email address is phca-service@judiciary.gov.ph. Or if you're not techy as some are, then you can actually send it by courier to the Central Authority, Office of the Court Administrator, 3rd floor, Old Supreme Court Building, Padre Faro Street, Ermita, Manila, 1000, Philippines. Now, once the so basically you would have, the website of the OCA will provide as to how you can pay the $100. Okay? Basically, just have to provide everything. The $100 is not fixed. As much as possible, it is fixed. But if it's, there are instances wherein the service might require or might be more than $100. So in case it does happen, then the court will actually provide the statement of it, or any invoice, statement of account, for you to be paying to pay that. Okay. Now, but let's just limit it to $100. Say for example, it's just a statement of claim to be served in Makati. Now, once the OCA, or the Office of the Court Administrator, receives the documents, it will review it if it complies with the requirements set forth by the Philippine authority. If it doesn't comply with the requirements of the OCA, then it will deny the service, the request for service. And it will, of course, return it to you, and basically you would have to actually the OCA will provide reasons therefore. Okay. However, on the other hand, if for example the OCA approves the request for service, now what's going to happen is that the OCA in Padre Fauro, Manila, will actually forward all the requests for service to the executive judge or the presiding judge in the area where the intended recipient resides. For example, in Makati, then the OCA will forward that to the executive judge or the presiding judge in Makati. And then basically once the executive judge or the presiding judge receives that, it will actually now commission or appoint or use the assistance of a sheriff, a process server, or any competent personnel that the judge thinks that will definitely affect the service. And then the sheriff, the process server, or the competent personnel will actually attempt to serve the person with the documents. Okay, once the documents have been served, for example, it has been served in Makati, the sheriff was successful to serve it to Miss B. Okay, now it will complete, okay, it will now complete a return on the service. It's more of like an affidavit of service wherein it shows as to how it was served. The name of who received it, when, what time, where. Okay, typical affidavit of service, just to prove that it was served on the person. That sheriff, that process server, the competent personnel will have to execute that, or whoever actually executed the return, the service will actually complete the return on the service, and then will give it to the executive judge or the judge or the presiding judge who issued or requested for the assistance. Now, once it was received by the judge, say for example, there was successful service in the Miss B, okay, the judge will now complete a certificate, okay, showing that there was a successful service or not. Okay, if there was successful service, then of course the timeline will run, the limitation will run. So basically, once the service has been effected, Miss B will now have the opportunity to respond within a given time. Okay, 30 days if I'm not mistaken. But so basically, if she responds, then the courts will have to take care, will have to include her in the proceedings. If she fails to do so, then the other party can actually file a notice in default, noting the other party in default, and the case can move forward without Miss B. Okay. On the other hand, the executive judge, or of course, when the sheriff, the process server, the competent personnel might not be able to serve it. Okay, probably because it was the address was wrong, or probably the person has already died. Okay, whatever reasons, okay, of course we cannot compel because this is competent authority. Of course, the return on the service, the sheriff, the process server, and the competent personnel will actually issue a return saying that it was not successfully served. So the judge, the executive judge or the presiding judge will issue a certificate showing that, hey, service was not successful. Okay, now, the certificate must then be forwarded. Okay, so within 5 days, the process server, the sheriff, and the competent personnel will, after service, will have to actually execute and complete a return on the service. For the judge, once he has received that, he must execute, he must complete the certificate and must forward or must return to the forwarding authority, which is us in Alberta or the requesting state, within 30 days, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? Within 30 days from the certificate, the service must be actually, the judge says, or the judge, the executive judge and the presiding judge would have to actually return the certificate. Now, if for example there was successful service, again, like what I said, you have the option of responding or not, Miss B responding or not. If she doesn't respond, noting in default. Now, if there is no successful service, now we would have to go back to the Court of King's Bench, showing that there was no service, that there was no attempt. So that's how it works now. Okay, this used to be from commencement proceedings from civil and commercial. Now it has expanded to family. Okay, now in terms of that is how it is now. Okay, you cannot go directly to the person, serve the person in the Philippines from Canada. If you think so, that would be denied. Why? Because this is now a treaty from contracting states, and Canada must abide by the decisions made by the Philippines in rejecting or objecting to direct service. And we have to comply. Otherwise, there will be no effective service. And that could be a ground for appeal. Okay? Because again, we did not follow. So that is something that cannot be upheld. Okay? So I hope that this enlightens us, everyone, in serving the documents from Canada, particularly to the Philippines. There are different contracting states such as India, all countries in the world who have signed with in that Hague Service Convention are governed by the provisions thereof. Okay, different jurisdiction, different contracting states, different decisions, different means of service. I hope that this actually helps you guys. Okay, in terms of divorce. And if, for example, there is one exception, but I'm not going to tell that because that would be something that you would have to discuss with me. Okay? Now, thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions, just feel free to actually email me at irvin.bautista@outlook.com. Okay? Any email or any queries that you have, just let me know and I'll be glad to actually respond to you. I do apologize. Okay? I'm not going to provide you with my mobile number just because, of course, I want to make sure that I can store all of the conversations that we have. So again, thank you, and I will see you next time. Bye.